It's 20:03. So you know what that means?
We're late.
We're early.
Oh,
Really?
It's after 8. I see. Hence the
I've been waiting to do this all day.
I didn't look like an official after 8 to me. Show me the packet.
Real.
So I can say cheese it in the chat, right? Like that. And do other people see that, or is it just us that see that?
That's just the private chat. Do you want the link to the? Do you want the link to the private chat?
How do I do that? Yeah.
Hang on, I'll send it to you.
I need things.
And I'll do it. I'll send it to you on Discord.
Okay.
Because
I haven't got one of these for a while, and the last time I did it, it was with, I don't know.
Just to remind you, we have started, Jack.
Yeah, I know.
Hello.
Hello, internet.
Hello. Hello, and welcome to Let's Drone Out. I'm trying to finish my after 8. Leave me alone.
I haven't even got my.
It doesn't take effort. It's a wafer thin mint after all.
I can't remember. I never remembered them being like so, you know,
minty.
Yeah, really minty. Oh, it kind of
Let's
reminds
turn
me of
out
brushing my
all
teeth.
your chocolate reviews.
Sugary.
delicious.
That stuff in the
Chocolate.
middle is just sugar.
I'm trying to wake up. I've just been like in a fog all day. Hello and welcome to Let's Drone Out. Tonight we are joined by the usual everyone's favourite curry kitten.
Hello.
My little Tony.
Bonjour.
How are you, my dear wife? Are you all right?
Yeah, I'm alright.
It's good to see you here. Like we all love you. Everyone loves you. Our guest tonight, Mr. Clean Flight / Dominic Clifton.
Woo, hello.
AKA the drop-down menu SPF3. And if it hasn't got the logo on it, then it's a clone and was probably sold to you by Radio C.
Oh, no,
Nice.
Bang Good. The other one.
Yeah, Bang Good.
Yeah,
And
I wish all those reviews on Bang Good had turned into sales for me, because that would be lovely, but, you know, what are you going to do, eh?
And the wonderful wizard that's the actual thing controlling us twitching behind the curtain, Andrew / Frank.
Good evening.
Oh, how is it, Puppet Master?
Well, you know, we started, so that's good.
Yeah, I suppose.
Your hair been super styled today, Frank. I'm just looking at it, and it looks like it's blow dried upwards. Like, whoosh.
No,
What's going on there?
Just I think
It is
it rained
impressive
on
today.
the way back from the shop today. That's all.
Right.
Wow.
So
Well,
I'm
it
going to
looks good in the rain.
I'm dangerously going to share my
Yeah.
screen for.
God.
No, it's fine. It's fine. This works. I can enlarge it.
If we
So,
get kicked off of YouTube,
Yeah, we know why. It's Jack's fault.
Completely my fault. So anyway, we invited Dominic Clifton on a few weeks ago, and this is what happened moments before the show. And Tony, I'd like to remind everyone, didn't believe this really happened. This is Dominic Clifton paying no attention and looking on his phone. So let's just rewind that. Hang on.
great. Is this going to be
Look.
an hour of this?
Oh dear. And
At
you've
that
got
point-
skate shoes on.
Yeah, and at that point I was like, oh, cock it.
Not as much as you were.
And then,
Oh,
ow,
look at the face. Ow.
that
So,
really hurt. I came down hard.
so if you're listening,
It wasn't the fact I didn't believe him. It was the fact that he took a photo laying on the
Yeah.
floor and went,
Yeah, that's the bit that made us think he's just having a laugh with us. No one takes a
Yeah.
photo of themselves on the floor saying, I've fallen down and I
No.
can't get up. Look here.
Yeah, that's basically where I was. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
on the lounge floor. My girlfriend said, "Don't move," because I might have broken something. So we waited for an ambulance. So I stayed on the floor.
yeah, you're meant to stay on the floor where you fell, not drag yourself in.
I fell over, and then I tried to get to the front door. I tried to stand up, and I couldn't stand up. And then I got to the front door, and then I felt so faint, I actually had to just lie on the doorstep for a few minutes and recover a little bit. And then eventually I got the keys out of my pocket and crawled in, stood up again, tried to stand up again, couldn't. Pain was too much, and then got to about the carpet, and that's where I was for about the next 2 hours while we waited for 2 ambulances to arrive.
Okay,
Mr.
yes,
Booty
all
Cakes
right,
is not convinced. He thinks you're a stuntman. He's saying show ambulance.
So if you're
there is a video of the ambulance. I think I sent it to Jack, but I don't know.
yeah, I've got it.
Dig out.
So if you're listening to this via audio, I'm very sorry. So we're looking at basically your driveway in France, is it, or Spain?
No,
Can't remember.
Spain.
Spain, that was it. One of those two. One of them where there's a lot more sunshine and better food. And he stepped over a gap between the car parking space and the wall of the steps and slid.
It used to be a rose bed. I took the roses out and moved them.
Do you think it might be worth putting something back in there?
Do you know there was actually a tree, a small little pot plant in that corner, and I moved it around the back of the house, and I want to move it back again so I don't accidentally take the same shortcut again and fall over again. But I can't lift heavy stuff at the moment, so I don't want to move it yet. So, but it will go back there. The long-term plan is to remove the rose bed.
The good idea with the whole rose bed is it's thorny, so that's another deterrent for you being a little.
The irrigation system leaks into the house, so that's the root cause of the problem. So I have to get that fixed first, and then
right. So
unlike Drone is Life, we've got video footage of accidents and ambulances of our guests that don't turn up.
There you go. So that's my friend at the top helping me. That's me lying on the stretcher with some ambulance people.
And then your friend's videoing it all.
No, she's holding the light up so she can see, so they can see where they're going.
Because we're infrared camera. Look at you.
One of the ambulance people nearly fell over on a different step while they're carrying me. So yeah.
Right. So there's your proof, everyone.
That's what happened.
And best suggestion so far, instead of rose bush, put a ball pit there. That's not a bad idea.
They just play in the ball pit. Yeah.
I really, really love our comments, like our chat, because not only do we accidentally ignore them and they have a whale of a time on their own, but they also just generally mock us.
And they have also been sending in their horror stories.
Richard says,
"Yes, yes, we've had a few horror stories."
Oh, I was listening to that episode the other week.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh my god, that was quite.
We're getting closer and closer to the Halloween episode special, where we're going to be reading out the horror stories, and so people have been sending in their horror stories to letsdroneout@gmail.com. So we're collecting them all together. Jack's given us a little teaser on the Patreon feed for his horror story. There's a nice collection going together, but if anyone else has a near miss or some actual hit or something that's gone horribly wrong, a flyaway, anything like that, if you want to anonymously send in your horror story to letsdroneout@gmail.com, we'll collect them together for the Halloween episode.
Speaking of horror shows, next week I will be on Wednesday from 8 till 9. I'll be interviewed by Drone is Life on the other podcast.
Are you going to turn up or fall over or something?
I might chuck myself about, really, but no, I'll show up.
Friday night, isn't it? Yeah.
No, it's Wednesday, isn't it? Really. So, yeah. So, guys, if you can, show me some support, and if you can all show up in the chat, I'll post a link somewhere or something, and if you all can just make a mockery and a ruckus in the old chat, I'd really appreciate it. And ask me some questions, because how much Jello do you think it will hold? Says MK Lab, Make Me Lab, which I like as well. You could fill it with Jello.
What
the rosebud?
Oh no, the idea is to get rid of it and just make the driveway slightly wider now. That's the better solution. Just remove the hole that makes you fall into it. So
I really don't think that old Sharpoo will. Yeah, I mean, where is Sharpoo regards Drone is Life? But I don't think Sharpu will ever do a podcast. He replies with one-word answers to my emails, and
This is a topic for Droner's Life next week, surely.
Yeah. No worries.
I'm trying to think what's worse though. You ask Sharpu to turn up and he doesn't, or you ask him and then Jack shows up instead. What's worse? But yeah, we should talk about our guest.
Yeah, Dom, how you been? It's been a while. I've missed you.
It's been a while. Thanks. Yeah, it's been an interesting year, let's say. Interesting couple of years. So I did all the H7 stuff maybe a year and a half ago, which I can't believe it's been a year and a half already. I think that's when it released, and then it was in development for about at least 6 months or so before that. So that kept me pretty busy. But I don't think there's been any other H7 FCs since I did mine, actually, which is kind of surprising. So busy doing that, and then been working on some OSD related stuff for a while, and then obviously all the Flight 1 stuff just before Christmas, I think. So did a bunch of work for them. And yeah, the Beta Flight Fallout recently. That's been interesting.
Is that a computer game? Beta Flight Fallout.
Can I start with the drama question then? Since you've brought it up.
We're not that podcast.
Yeah, we are. So, because whenever I think of Dominic, I instantly think back to Base Flight, and still the specific license terms that says Dominic can't play there.
But do you know why that came about?
It follows you around. Well,
do you know why that came about?
Because Time Cop's crazy.
No. What actually happened was I wrote a program called Hydra IRC, which is an IRC chat client for Windows, and it had a very non-permissive license. It was open source in the terms of you could see the source and look at it and contribute bug fixes and do all this kind of stuff, but it wasn't GPL, right? So he did a sort of piss take of that license, and that's why it was like that. That's the history.
But drama seems to follow you. What's happened with Beta Flight and the fallout there?
Yes.
Well, yes.
It's making Jack stress.
For a number of years, probably about 3 years or so.
Any views expressed? Where's the disclaimer?
We haven't had to have a disclaimer for a few
disclaimer.
There it is.
Thank you, Frank.
Read it out.
The scrolling thing, yeah.
I lost mine.
Read it out.
Shall I read it out?
Yeah.
I've got to wait till it comes back again. Legal notice. Any views expressed by any guests, especially me, on this show are personal, very personal indeed, and may not reflect the views of others. There you go.
You've heard this show before, Dom. You've done that perfectly.
Why am I even here?
Right, what was I talking about? Oh, yes, that was it.
We're going to be
about 3 years ago, I think it probably was. The sort of atmosphere within the sort of Beta Flight development sort of members area, because I don't know whether you guys know, but there's two Slacks basically. There's the public Slack and then there's the private Slack.
Boris, I still love you.
And there was sort of growing discontent among developers, and the attitude from the primary maintainer, Mike Keller, was sometimes absolutely fine, and he does lots of great work, and without him sort of Beta Flight wouldn't be going anywhere, because he does lots of maintenance stuff like I used to do on the Clean Flight side of things. But other days you'd catch him and it would just be like the worst person in the entire world to try and get anything done or agree with. And the scale sort of became, it was like 10% of the time you might get like some bad reaction, then 90% of the time it was fine. But it's drifted completely the opposite way, where it got to a point where I just don't even want to talk in this channel because of the negative feedback that I know I will receive no matter what it is that I do. And it ended in the culmination of me submitting a bug report during a release candidate phase, which is the exact specific time that you're supposed to report bugs to a development environment. And then that basically just snowballed out of control. And Mike told me in no uncertain terms that what was the quote? It was something like, "Stop talking to me. I'm done wasting my time with you." That's what he said. So I'm like, Fine. So at that point, I deleted him from the CleanFlight Slack because I didn't want his attitude to affect the CleanFlight users, where he had been very helpful over the years, but hadn't been active at all in there. So I'm just like, I don't want this guy talking to me anymore. He doesn't want to waste his time talking to me. I'm not going to waste my time talking to him. So that's fine. The next morning I wake up and he'd also deleted me from the Betaflight thing. So I'm like, fine. What do I care? And that was that. And I've been happy ever since. It's been great. Absolutely fantastic. And occasionally I submit bug reports because obviously I have a bunch of users which use Betaflight. So when they have issues and they report them to me, I then report them back to the Betaflight development team. But there was one recently, for an example, there's like a bug in the configurator where on one of the H7 boards, if you click activate MSC, it goes, your flight controller hardware doesn't support this, but that's not actually true. It's the software on it that doesn't support it. So I reported this because the error message is incorrect. And then they have a bot which closes issues when they get when no one replies to them. So MacGyver Gim is the main CleanFlight configurator developer. So I just mentioned him and say, have you any thoughts on this? And then I get accused by spamming, and then Mike Keller comes on and says this, that, and the other. You're not in good standing with the Betaflight community. And I think, which is a load of bullshit, excuse my French, because the only person I'm not really in a good standing with is him, not the Betaflight community at large, because most of them appreciate the work that I've done, as far as I understand. At least they tell me that quite frequently. So
if you don't, please email Hydra at cleanflight.co.uk.
Yeah, no, my email address in the source code. It's fine. You can find it. It's no problem. So yeah, so there's all this drama. So it just became intolerable, basically, working with them. So I'm happier not doing any of it at the moment. Just doing my own thing.
Welcome to the idyllic world of open source.
And a lot of people think there was a lot of drama around this as well, because it happened shortly after I'd started work with the Flight 1 guys as well. So people were just thinking, oh, it's cool because of Flight 1, which is completely untrue. And it had absolutely nothing to do with it. The situation had been brewing for, like I say, about 3 years or so, I think, probably. So, and that had nothing to do with it. So just to put a nail in that coffin.
Good to know.
Mike, if you want to come in and defend yourself, you can.
You'll have to read out your own disclaimer as well. That's the new rule.
Yeah. You're welcome to slag each other off.
At the time that I left, was booted out of, should I say, more appropriately, the Betaflight members channel, there was only about 2 sort of developers sort of actively chatting in there. Whereas when it initially started, like everyone was in there like all the time, like talking to each other, suggesting things, getting really good feedback and so on. But it just came to a point where just no one wanted to deal with Mike, basically, and his odd attitude at times. So, which is really unfortunate, because I want to create things and make cool stuff for everybody. But what am I supposed to do? It just like kills your motivation. Like any kind of desire to want to help improve things is just like, no, you have to deal with that. It's just like, no, I don't want to deal with that guy. So it's unfortunate.
Is that why you've still got the bug where you can't flash the any SPF freeze or anything? Fails.
I'm not even aware of that.
Well,
send me a link afterwards and I can have a look if you like. But you'll probably find it's just the one that's not going in DFU mode or something. They haven't got the drivers installed. But I've got a whole bunch of it in a box somewhere up there. I think I maybe flashed one quite recently, actually, because someone goes, have you got any old flight controllers? And I'm like, yeah, I've got some custom returns from Get FPV that are reconditioned and depinned and so on. And I just sent him a couple of these flashed. With
I'm having to flash them through, the defuse demo.
Yeah, no, they don't. You have to set the right baud rate on them, because but that's just an F3 thing, because it was pre USE stuff. Yeah, manual baud rate of 256,000. Yeah, that's an F3 specific thing, that is.
Yeah, maybe I've probably not the right baud rate.
Probably didn't read the manual. Probably says it's manually now.
I do. I have to read it every time.
You never read enough.
And you can click SP Racing F3 and then click manual and download it. It's probably somewhere in there.
Oh god, yeah, but you know,
probably a screenshot of like CleanFlight.
You are
like,
too much hard work.
You are 3. Bash till it works.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
Beta Flight dev drama. Yeah, so there's always dev dramas, it seems, because like I mean, do you remember the Open Pilot and Tau Labs? That was another
Open toilet.
Yeah, we called it Open Toilet, didn't we?
Open Toilet, yeah.
Yes, I can read.
Then there was the droning.
I never heard about those because the boards were so bloody difficult to get hold of. It's like, well, I can just dream of the drama of having anything.
Yeah. Well, CleanFlight runs on those, so you'd be all right.
Is droning still a thing?
Do you know what? I don't know. I haven't looked for a while, but I know that one of the guys that was doing that does contribute a lot to Betaflight in maybe the last droning, de-roning, isn't it? Like Ronin injury thing. That was it. I don't know. I haven't looked on the GitHub thing. Let's have a look.
Yeah, I was just thinking because of TriFlight went to that
code. Oh yeah, they moved it, didn't they?
Yeah.
No, the last commit was 4th of July 2019. So no, droning is dead.
No,
seems pretty dead.
Yeah.
And so are tricopters. Oh, we got loads of questions.
Can you answer this one?
Go on, great. Clifton flies, it says. Richard.
Green Patches has asked, what would be the best version of CleanFlight to run on the SP Racing F4 Evo/OSD? I've had one I've been meaning to put in a quad for a year or two, still in the handwritten envelope from Dominic.
Oh, brilliant. Lovely. I'd probably compile the latest version of Betaflight and flash it on both. Because if you got the double stack thing, because the OSD thing was a separate thing to the Evo, I think you need to leave the latest version of CleanFlight that you can get for the OSD board, and probably the latest version of Betaflight. But you have to compile it from source for it if it still compiles. Otherwise, just go back through the history of CleanFlight or Betaflight until you find one that compiles and runs on it. Really, but I haven't got a specific version number in mind.
Having to compile it yourself.
Yeah. I mean, there was because the issue was with Betaflight, they didn't support the OSD slave board, which is what the OSD board was. So like this new FR Sky OSD that's on the Maytech H743. Yeah, it has a separate little computer on there, which is an L4 STM L4 processor, which basically does all the OSD stuff and it does all pixel stuff. And there's a UART communication interface between an L4 processor and your flight controller. And they talk to each other. Basically, this is what I did in 2015, I think it was. But the OSD was using a Max 7456 chip, but it still had 2 CPUs talking to each other via a UART link, right? So this was the same thing. So this was basically going to be stage 1. Stage 2 was then going to be the Pixel OSD stuff, which was going to be on a separate board, much like the FR Sky stuff currently is now. So that was the process. But then what happened was that someone, I think it was Jay Flyper, I think it was, one of the Betaflight devs, ported MinimOSD into the inside of Betaflight Core and then added the Max 7456 chip driver inside Betaflight Core. But brought with it all the horrible OSD code, which I've been trying to get rid of. And I had this really nice sort of like element system. So you had a data source provider and you had an element, and you could have a data source which could be like the temperature, and it could come from different places, but the actual way that you display the temperature, no matter what kind of temperature it is, never really changes, right? And it's the same with loads of other things. So I had this lovely separation of concerns and all the unit tests and all this kind of stuff, and that basically all got thrown away. And when I rebased on the latest version of Betaflight, maybe a year or so later, so that was unfortunate, but yeah.
Just isn't that stuff? Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, so is CleanFlight now almost a fork of Betaflight in a way?
Well, sort of yes, sort of no. So you could call them one and the same if you really wanted to, because you could all say they're all a fork of MultiWii still, essentially. because they are, but not really a fork of multi-wii because it was a port of multi-wii, so that's more technically correct. So they're all essentially a fork of Baseflight, which is Timecop's hard work, which we ought to be forever grateful for.
Did you just vomit in your mouth slightly?
No, loads of people did really great work.
Okay.
And that was the work of moving it from an 8-bit to a 32-bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the main bulk of that code was writing a driver layer for the STM processors instead of the Arduino processors that we used at the time. And then the rest of the code sort of remained 8-bit, and eventually it got 32-bitified, and then it got FPU-ified because the F1 processor didn't have an FPU, so there wasn't much use of floats. It was all integer-based math. And then I did the F3 stuff, and that's when things really sort of took off quite a lot because now we had a much better way of basically doing math, basically just much less processor intensive way of doing all the math side of things because it was done in hardware by the MCU. And then the Beatflight stuff came along, going back to your sort of forking question, and then I essentially rebased CleanFlight on the latest version of Betaflight, which was 2.0, maybe 3.5 or something like that, which was claimed CleanFlight 2.5. And I did the same thing again recently. And Betaflight and CleanFlight are pretty much identical. I think Betaflight's up to 4.22. I haven't merged those changes into CleanFlight, which is on 4.2, but they fly and run identically.
So you talked a bit about...
And the other's not. One matches my T-shirt. This.
I do like them T-shirts.
And the other one, it doesn't. So I don't like flying it. It doesn't match my T-shirt.
So is CleanFlight now more kind of a long-term support version of...
Well, yeah, I mean, so going back to the developer discontent
we still haven't moved away from that.
No, well, it's an ongoing theme. It's never going to go anywhere because there is still, and there always will be, while Mike Keller is the maintainer of Betaflight, a developer discontent. That is the situation.
Can't you just go into iNav and cause less trouble?
I've done a bunch of work for iNav recently. I helped out with the H7 stuff that got merged in a bit ago. But Constantine's very busy with lots of other different things. But the H7 stuff is coming along. So I'm going to be helping that out and making the targets work on that. But going back to sort of where CleanFlight could go and what it has in for the future, I've had a few sort of ideas. I'd love to sort of bring it back. And there's been a couple of developers that have contacted me because they don't like just Butterflight, for instance. Those guys, they don't like the Betaflight guys. MUFlight, they don't so much like the Betaflight guys. There's quite a lot of people that don't like the main lead developers. It turns out. Let's see. All the Brain FPV guys, they don't like them. There's pretty much no one really likes contributing to Betaflight, but if you want your code integrated, that's who you got to deal with, and you've got to suck it up, unfortunately. And one day you might get treated well, another day you might get the hammer thrown at you. Yeah. So there's a lot of discontent in the community, which is unfortunate because I think it's stifled innovation quite a lot. So various people from different manufacturers have contacted me and said, can you write some code to support this new thing? So Tony Cake, for instance, asked me about adding support for the Ghost protocol, but I'm like, well, with the whole thing with the Betaflight guys at the moment, I don't think anything I do is going to get accepted by anybody. So probably not a good idea.
Why don't you just change your name?
Why not just change my name? Yeah.
Talking of names, there's a question somewhere. Where was it?
Why the name Hydra?
Yeah. You probably answered it.
Oh, it just came from, I think when I was about maybe 10 or so, using a BBC Micro at school, and then everyone wanted to come up with like nicknames and login names and so on for themselves. And I opened up a dictionary and I was flicking through, as you do when you're like 10 or whatever. And I'm like, Hydra, what does it mean? I'm like, a multi-headed mythical greased, which is hard to kill with like serpent heads and stuff, or a aquatic little organism that lives at the bottom of a pond. So I liked it. So stuff.
There you go.
So I had a question about processors because it went F1, F3, F4, F7. Why H7? What's H7 do that F7 can't, and what happened to G?
Okay, so H7 is amazing. It's total amaze balls. It's got a DMA mux on it, which is one of the really cool things about it. Which basically means you can rework all your DMA streams independently of everything else. Whereas on the older processors, they're all tied to doing one specific thing. So it's much more flexible in terms of how you make the data flow around the processor internally. It's probably a layman's way of describing the DMA mux. That's one of its key features. The G series also has the same DMA mux, which is also very cool. The H7, the one that I use, the 750, has very little in terms of internal flash memory. It has about the same as what we used for the F1, which is 128K. When everything used to fit, you could fit baseline 128K. It was great. I think it actually fitted on the 64K one, the CJMCU, which I ported it to. But these days, that's not enough to basically have all the features that you need. I think iNav's minimum is like 512. A lot of Betaflight features get cut out if you don't have enough space. 256 is one of the lower limits these days. But the way around that is to use either A, external memory, and you run the code from external memory, or B, load the code into RAM, because the H7 has got loads of RAM. So the way I took is basically you get an external chip and you load Betaflight into RAM and you run it from RAM. And it turns out it's really fast when you do that as well. So that is one of the core differences between the H processors, the H750 and the previous ones. The other main thing is that it's over twice as fast. It runs at 480 megahertz, the new ones do, instead of like 214 or something where the F7s do, which means you've got loads of room to do cool stuff like doing pixel OSDs and running your flight loop and doing all kinds of filters and AI crap and whatever you want to do with it. It's just an amazing processor.
Are we going to have another one?
Not only that, it's cheaper than an F7. It's cheaper. It's cheaper. Why don't you like it? Because you've got to write a bootloader. That's why.
Are we going to need anything on top of this? In another. Well, we always said we don't need any more, and then we always go F4, F5, and keep going up.
Well, there are. I mean, for the future, I'd probably be looking at dual core processors to offload some of the work onto a separate CPU. There's also the whole digital FPV side of thing, which is coming along, which is making the necessity for OSDs in the flight controller sort of redundant, because really all the video processing should be done in the frickin', where the camera memory buffer actually is. Like you get a camera and it's got pixels in RAM, right? And what they really need to do is build an OSD system into the HD digital cameras that you can draw anything on. That's my ideal long-term goal. All this analog OSD stuff is a bit crap, really, and it's going to be past its day pretty soon, to be honest. But some work from the manufacturers needs to happen with digital vector OSDs built into the camera systems and video systems. Because why would you want sort of all this, all the digital video processing and all the video signals going anywhere near the flight control stuff? It's just a total waste of time. Oh, look at this.
Too much back and forth.
Oh,
wow. In my Wally muglet.
Yeah.
Oh. Fantastic. But that's what I think about that. Emu-flight and Betaflight without the drama? No. No.
So will my quad FC be more powerful than my PC I used before 2010?
Probably, yes. Yeah. Yeah, the H7 processor is amazing. I mean, it has a bunch of other things. The I/O support on it is excellent. It allows you to connect loads of things to it. Like I use I use SDIO for the logging. So previous to the H7, everybody's been using is it SDMMC? Yeah, the old one. Which is an old interface, which is only 1 bit. So you send 1 bit, and then you send another bit, and then you send another bit. And with the H7, I use a 4-bit interface. So it allows you to send 4 times the amount of data. So you can fill the SD cards, write cache quicker, and then let the flight controller get back to actually doing flight control stuff much quicker. So basically anything that interferes with like getting back to the main core of the flight control loop, doing its thing about reading the data and then calculating the outputs and applying filters and all this kind of stuff, just happens just so much quicker on an H7. And you fly it and you're just like, oh my God, this thing flies amazing. And I haven't even done anything to it. It's like, I was shocked at how well it flies just on the initial port of it without even tuning a quad. I'm like, this is just night and day difference between the F7 that I had like maybe 1 or 2 years before that. And it's just the processor. Everything just runs really super smooth on it.
Okay, so I have a possible question about convergence. As I've been playing recently with OpenHD, which is a sort of open source digital. We do it on the Raspberry Pis, it squirts it down to the other side. So with the processor getting really fast, do you think we'll get to the situation, because basically the limiting factor in the latency is basically having that hardware encoding 264H, 265 before you basically squirt it down the Wi-Fi link to the other side. Are they getting fast enough to do that fast? Do you think it's going to
do that? You mean the
sort of the H-type chips, the hardware in those? Are we going to come to a point where, hey, this flight controller, it can do analog, it can do digital, or is that a whole? We'll have to build it into the cameras and everything.
The processors that are in the phones and so on these days, they're amazing. Like they do 4K like digital video recording and stuff. And
ARM quad cores, aren't they? Things.
Yeah. Well, octa-core and things like that, isn't it? And they've got built-in digital processors and all this stuff. Yeah, it'll happen eventually. It's just someone's got to push the need for it for the manufacturers, and that's where all technology comes from, right? Someone says we need to do this faster, and then someone will make a product because they think they can make some money out of selling it, right? That's the way it happens. So if you keep asking for it and just say, well, no, it's crap, the latency's terrible, some manufacturer will come out and go, no, I made a better one. Look, the latency's great now. And that's the way it works, right? So keep pushing for it, and it will happen. If you just sit on the ass, don't do anything, don't say anything, just go, oh, we should be better. And
so who's guessing? What? F10. F10. What date is that going to be?
We're on H.
No, the F10's already out. That was someone that stuck an F3 and an F7 on the same board. I think, and called it F10. It was hilarious. Great marketing done.
Brilliant.
I laughed when I saw the name of that. I'm like, that's pretty cheeky, that is.
Technically, it's dual core.
Yeah, it was.
It's hilarious. Do you reckon we'll have quad core? We probably will one day, let's face it, because back in the old days, we used to fly stuff with wood.
Well, I mean, you got the M series from ST, which I've not looked at their lineup recently, but I know that there's one which has I think it's like an F7 core and an F4 core. Sorry, not F4 and ARM cores. It's got an older ARM core and a newer ARM core, so you can do all the I/O sort of low-level I/O stuff like your D-shot processing and things like that on the I/O core, and then have all the complicated math shit on the better core, the 7 core, I think it is. I'd have to bring one of the data sheets to remind myself of it. It's been a little while since I looked. But those are coming down in price, but they're still more expensive than people want to pay for a flight controller. So, no, I ain't building one yet. Plus, there's a whole matter of software. Yeah, someone's got to write it. It's not currently me.
And it's that's kind of the thing with the H7, isn't it? It's you've built it, and they're gradually coming and doing various things with it. But there's now, I think, not that long ago, only a matter of weeks ago, that Maytech released an H7 board. I think.
For Betaflight?
I think so.
Because I know they've done a PixWalk one, and the RG Pilot have had H7 support for a while. But I didn't think Maytech had got. I mean, I'm out of the loop a little bit with some of this stuff, so I apologise in advance for that. Maytechsys.com, isn't it? Yeah. They've got. That's right. Yeah, because they've got the Maytech H743 wing flight controller, which will be the iNav one, So I don't think that'll run Betaflight. Now, the reason they've used the H743 is because they haven't written a bootloader, which allows you to use the external flash. So that's why the Maytech H743 is going to be super expensive, because the chip itself is way more expensive than an H750. But the solution is simpler because it doesn't need a bootloader. I went the extra mile, wrote a bootloader, and made it cheap.
Well done. And then my other question, I guess, is how long before we throw all of these processors away and go for FPGAs? How long till that?
I don't know about that. There are some interesting things in process terms, other than what ST is doing. FPGA is interesting. I've really not looked too much into that. I know the Brain FPV guys have been mucking about with FPGAs for their OSD stuff for a while. But the other things that's interesting is the RISC-V cores. I was contacted a little while ago about porting Betaflight, helping port Betaflight onto a RISC-V core, and that has actually sort of progressed. And just the other day, the guy emailed me, said, this is where I'm currently at. I had a look at the code base. I had a look at some of the stuff that they've done, and that's pretty interesting, because I don't know whether you know about it, but there's a core called a CPU called a Kendrite K210. I think it's really, really cheap. If you look at like Seed Studio, I think it is. Seed Studio. They do a bunch of like really cheap boards, which use this processor. So you can get one of those if you're interested in it, and help out with the RISC-V porting if you're interested in that side of things. But the thing that's interesting about the K210 is that it's got hardware AI as opposed to FPGA for just doing random things that you might want to do in hardware. I don't think there's that many random things that you want to do in hardware that the hardware doesn't already do at the moment. At least I can't think of too much off the top of my head. Because FPGAs are good for doing sort of like parallel work. I
worked a lot with them on the open source scaler. You know, it was an upscaler for retro video games, and all they do is get hot and have grounding issues.
And not to mention they're expensive as well.
Yeah, they are coke and whore money. That's all.
They're getting cheaper though, and I just know them as a way of doing things where you go from loop times to just it being pretty much instantaneous, and you stop thinking about loop times anymore.
Yeah. I mean, there's sense of feedback and the calculation, and then the motor output. I mean, you're always going to have something going on there. I don't know whether you're going to be able to do it all in hardware. I don't know. Maybe it'd be interesting. I'd love to see someone do it. That'd be cool.
It's a challenge for someone.
Yeah. I think some of the AI stuff's kind of interesting as well. I think there's some interesting things you can do with regards to filtering, with regards to the dynamic filtering side of things, and just working it out better using AI. I think people are working on stuff like that. There's quite a few things you can do with it, and sort of some image recognition stuff would be interesting as well if you integrated the camera into it as well. So that could be interesting.
So is the AI stuff that's going on at the moment with the boards that are currently out there, is that mainly about the sort of replacing a PID loop? I guess?
There's what was there? I think there was a PhD guy somewhere in the States did Neuroflight, right? And I think Joshua Bardhurst also touched on this. I think I tend to agree with his current analysis that in order to teach an AI, you have to do a lot of stuff repeatedly, and getting it to a point where it's taught is a problem. And the second problem is the situation changes depending on the state of your quad. So maybe you hit a tree and bend the prop. Now the AI's going, what do I do? What do I do? I don't know. I haven't encountered this because no one taught me this before. Maybe your screws come loose on your frame and it starts vibrating at some kind of weird frequency. There's all this kind of stuff which you would have to teach the AI about all these different things. And I think that is the issue of making it fly by AI. I think that's one of the hard challenges to solve. I'm not saying it's not unchallenging and people shouldn't try, but it's a difficult task, and it's one that's a time-consuming task as well, because you need sort of like either an environment which is, I'm repeating Joshua Bardwell here, which is the same as what you get in real life, which is nigh on impossible to create, right? Gravity, wind, and all that kind of stuff. Dynamics of wind around a prop, and calculated motors to be 100% exact that it is in real life, and then running your code in that simulated environment thousands of times.
No curvature.
No, not going to happen very easily. So yeah, I mean, so I think the AI could be used in other areas, such as the filtering, for instance. This is like a really basic thing that you can use it for. So, you know, like we had this dynamic notch filter thing that was added, which turned out to be pretty great for reacting to changing conditions of your quad, as in the state of decay of all of your flying things that you have, because they're all pristine and they work perfectly when you first get them, and then they don't fly so well anymore, and then you buy a new one because you can't be bothered to tune it right.
That's it. Muddy,
so having the AI just
motors and
get better at that. Yeah.
Here's a question.
I remember changing motor bearings. When was the last time any of you guys changed a motor bearing?
Jack was asked about
Jack did one today.
Jack does.
Last night. Yeah.
Mine was on my tricopter, on my DT750s.
I'm shocked. Yes, Jack. Yes, I did one maybe about 3 weeks ago, but only because you can't get the motors anymore, and I like that particular quad, and I had just the bearings already.
I've got.
Did you heat it up? And
got a kit
whilst protecting the magnets against heat. How did you get the bearing out? Was it in the bell or the bottom or the other one?
The bottom, yeah.
Oh, it's not too bad.
The stator.
But if it's in the top part of it, then
so the way to get it out of the top bit of the stator is find the right size that sits in between the stator and the windings.
Yeah.
With a small socket there. And you can do what I used to do. And what you can do is you can run the the top of the socket and take the chamfer off it with a grinder. So I've got a set of these sockets and I've got a set of flat sockets. So they're flattened on top.
Yeah.
And they're great for using as cups and smashing things out. So yeah. If you can't find your own tools, make them yourself.
That's it. Making tools is great. I love making tools.
Yeah.
Investing in tools is never a bad decision. One of my bandmates said to me once. I shall not forget his words.
It's
yes, Fabiano calculator. Are you hearing this?
You don't have to answer this question from Mr. Shady if you don't want to. Read it out, Frank, for the actual podcast.
Well, let's put it this way. I never made another batch after some point in time. I just went, nope.
That's enough.
Nope. So, yeah, I think if you looked on like AliExpress and like Banggood and just you look at quantity available and it'll say like 8,000. Clearly, they did a manufacturing run of 8,000 boards. And I'm like, no. I can't, you order 8,000 of something, the price of the CPUs comes right down, the price of all the other components comes right down, all the connectors comes right down, and therefore your price is like super cheap. So there's no way I could compete with that. Plus, you also have to have the upfront investment to afford to actually have enough money to say, factory, make me 8,000 boards and do it now. And they'll go, well, give us some money then.
Must be well annoying having that happen. I've got a genuine run in my X-Class, by the way.
It wasn't. It was kind of cool at the same time as being really annoying. It was absolutely fantastic. I remember it quite clearly. Like the day that the thing that I designed in my head turned up from the factory, the first prototype of the SP Racing F3, and I'm like, oh my god, I made and designed this, and it's here now. Cool. It was really, really cool. So in one way, having someone else clone it validated that everything I was doing was great. Which was,
except those stupid little connectors. that were too close to the edges.
No, you see, but everyone's going back to connectors now. Everyone loves connectors.
No,
It depends on the connectors. The ones with the little latches that don't break off quite so easily are good.
I promised
one
sorry,
batch of SP Racing F3s didn't have. They fucked up the solder paste that they used on one batch, which is why I had a bunch of returns from Get FPV. They fucked up the solder paste, so some of the things came off them a bit too easily.
The USB
rectified. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That was
but
rectified.
At least they didn't get it as wrong as the Omnibus F4s. They just you'd breathe on them and they would be like ping.
The components that they use on the clones is just a nightmare. To be honest, I'm kind of over talking about clones, to be honest, but I will say that if you specify as a 6-volt capacitor with this rating, right, they won't use that, and plus you have to use a capacitor that's got a higher rating anyway because it derates in certain conditions and so on. So they will use the cheapest, crappiest ones that they could possibly buy in order to build the product that you're buying, as opposed to someone like me who buys original parts from authorized resellers and proper manufacturers. My reels at the back here for my pick and place machine, which you can see some on the machine over here. They're all genuine good stuff from known brands like Kemet and AVX and so on, as opposed to.
I just don't see why people.
Three.
Why do people put such rubbish clones in there? You're carrying a nice GoPro. You might be flying over the sea. You want the
same reason people use remolded tires. They don't value their life. Painless says, I remember chatting about the SPF Racing F3 and SPR Racing F3 and the start of the FC revolution. Thanks for laying the foundation for the modern hobby.
Yeah.
There you go.
No worries.
I've got one from AA here. I asked him to post it again, so can someone read that out?
AA asks.
I really should know this, and embarrassing I don't, so I'll just ask. Are you the maker of the Hydra app? What's the Hydra app?
I think that answers the question.
Yeah, I was like,
what is really annoying is that when people post snippets of code on GitHub from logs and things like this that have @ and then the word Hydra, because what happens is GitHub then does a mention on me, and because the Hydra is quite popular, I get these random posts from projects that I've got no involvement or affiliation with, getting me mentioned. I'm like, can you please quote the code if it contains @Hydra on GitHub? Just please quote the code. Just put the triple quotes, triple backticks before and after the thing that you paste in, and then I won't have to unsubscribe from every one of those, please.
But yeah, to fill in the gap there, I think
the Hydra thing.
I think the Hydra FPV app is a sort of for following on racing, watching the racing feeds, and also I believe it's got a kind of betting part of it as well, if I'm not much mistaken. I've only seen it mentioned in passing, but it's definitely something to do with racing and following the feeds.
Yeah.
Okay.
What? I've got a silly question and I've got a half sensible question. Which one do you want?
We'll be the judge
first.
When the new processors for Macs come out, will compatibility be really good?
Who's that question directed to?
You, Mr. Cleanfly.
Me? Why do you think I would know about that? I used to know, because I have a prior history in tech support. I did maybe 15 years of tech support, and I used to be the guy on the end of the phone when you're typing into your VAX VMS system, going, my program doesn't work. Why? And I'm like, well, have you tried this? Have you tried that? I never once in my career said, have you tried switching it off and on again? I never said that.
Why not? Ever. It solves so many problems.
Noob tech supports do that.
I used to use an 11750 and Microvaxes and even a PDP 11.
She knows.
Oh my god, they're wanking each other off.
I found my code for it the other day whilst I was looking for my Amiga discs. I found loads and loads of Fortran.
Yeah, I've still got loads of Amiga discs in the garage. I don't know whether they're even readable anymore, but yeah. Cool. Those were the days. Yeah, because it was all this was back before Ethernet stuff. I was doing all this. It was all RS232 serial comms, in manual covers, connecting 6 wires together or whatever it was, or maybe 8 or something for the data, all the data lines and so on with the multiplexers and stuff. And then 10 base 2 came along, the one where you could on Friday afternoon go quick unplug the cable, and then your entire office network would go out, and then you would sit back and have a coffee while you talk to tech support, and everyone would have a nice Friday afternoon. But those days long gone. They introduced Starpoint networks, and now you can't do that. Damn it.
There's another important question from Painless.
Color OSD Tech. I hadn't ever created any color OSD Tech. Is one way of answering that.
What's the pixel thing you mentioned though?
So the way that story went, more developer fallout drama. Here we go. Let's do it. Let's go round 2. Ding ding. So.
Any views expressed by Dominic Clifton?
Yeah.
He's a gobshite. Sue him.
No, it's all good. It's all good. So there was a guy called Alberto, also who lives in Spain, who said and started work on iNav OSD. And if you look on the GitHub, you can find the initial project of that there. I contacted him and said, do you want to make something that, because I can put this into production, because he wasn't, he was just doing software side of things and some of the hardware side of things. So we got talking. I gave him a bunch of ideas. He gave me a bunch of ideas. FR Sky offered him a boatload of money. He now works for FR Sky, and that's why you've got the FR Sky OSD. So I went, well, probably can make my own. And then, look, show treat. There is a Pixel OSD running on an L4 processor. This is my original prototype, which works absolutely fine. The yellow wire is video in and video out, and there's an L4 processor somewhere in the middle. And this was made maybe or so about maybe a week or so, I think, after Alberto went to work for FR Sky.
Zero.
And then I've done an H7 that's got all that L4 stuff. Instead of it being 2 separate processors, I've got a flight controller. Here we go.
Hang on, buddy. Hang on. Let's go into degenerate stuff. Oh, look. Wow, look at the size of that.
And check out the frame rate.
I
60
like
FPS pitches. Well, actually, that was technically that was 50 because it was PAL.
Yeah.
60.
We're not in American.
No. But yeah, the frame rate's quite
we've got to stop you there for a split second because we've got a donation from Zero FPV. Thank you very much. And if you watch the show, Tom, you know we've got to like something.
Yeah, the only person who donates anymore. Thank you, Zero. We love you.
There's your nipple shot. Take your pictures, and in 10 years' time,
upstairs.
You might get your money back. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Zero. I hope you're okay.
We love Zero.
Thank you.
Hey, Jack, question for you. Do I get any of that? Do I get any of that at 10 euros? Because it was in euros, wasn't it? Look. You don't even have to convert it to GBP.
I don't know. I still... This is a little jokey dig at Frank, but I still haven't been paid for the hosting. No, the website.
That didn't sound like a joke to me.
Paid your brother.
That sounded like a request for money.
Yeah.
I think YouTube steals €3 at least, doesn't it, before we get anything?
Well, yeah, YouTube holds on to the money.
Oh, we got another one because you moaned that no one paid.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, buddy. Shout out to you. And there's a quick one for you, Dom.
Malaga. On the Costa del Sol.
Costa del Sol.
Because Tailspin's in Spain as well.
Near Marbella. Not Marbella, Marbella. Because people say it wrong. Because 2 L's are pronounced like a Y in Spain.
Thank you, FX Side.
Thank you. I was getting a bit cold.
Isn't it? That's probably not from Asda, that one.
What's this? Oh, the firework. Yeah.
That's your week's worth of central heating, isn't it, Jack?
Yeah.
That's the €10 spent right there. That is.
Bloody hell, it's still going.
Oh, hey, it's finished. There it is. Woo-hoo.
Have you opened the window?
No.
Let the heat out.
Okay, we'll see you in heaven.
No,
in
he
a
just
couple of
loves
years.
the smell of phosphor, doesn't he?
Well, I'm next.
It's going to be your lungs or your arse what kills you, isn't it?
Definitely my butt. It's way up there. It's the number 4 killer.
Well,
Every
I think the topic of this conversation indicates that we have neared the end of the show. Because, as you may have noticed, we can only manage an hour of vaguely sensible conversation before it just ends up being about Jack's butt. So,
or penis.
It's never
There's
about
more to
that.
Jack.
Not
Sometimes
much
it is.
to talk about, not
Maybe
much
it's been an
to
hour
see.
Do we end it here?
No, mi español es malo.
Well, we did start 3 minutes late because of my after 8 eating. Dom, have you got anything to plug or complain about, or anyone else? Do you want to
Yeah.
Now
If
you've
you
moved
wanna-
away,
if
you can
wanna
slag the
run-
Queen off.
If you want to run alternative firmware that's not Betaflight, which I highly recommend, then you can run PX4 and Flight 1 on the H7 Extremes. There you go. In addition to running Betaflight and CleanFlight, I think it's the only flight controller in the world that allows you to run all of those 4 different bits of flight control software. So that's pretty cool.
Cool.
well, we've put a link to Seriously Pro in the description, and it'll be in the show notes as well.
Thanks.
No
Do
worries.
you want to come back in 10 years when... No. Do you want to come back like in 6 months and tell us what you've been up to, who you've been fighting with and stuff?
It's probably stuff like fixing induction hobs like this. And climbing up ladders and solar panels.
I don't think ladders and steps are not your thing.
Well, no, that's the thing. On that day, I'd actually been climbing up and down a ladder in the mountains on the top of a solar panel thing, trying to fix this.
You just got blasé about it all then, didn't you?
About as old as me, and I'd been up and down on it all day long. Absolutely no problem. Come out of the car, fall down the steps.
What happened?
If there was a point in that day where I thought I was going to fall over and break myself, it would have been going up and down the ladder. But no.
I've been going
What
up.
were you looking at on your phone that was that interesting?
Oh, this was the thing that was at the top of the ladder. It's very old. It's about as old as me, which is pretty old.
How old are you?
1974.
Oh,
Is when I was born. This was made in I think it's about 1988 or so. This is inside here. It's quite interesting. If the guy that owns this watches this, he'll probably laugh. There's 4 solar panels in there. Really, really old ones. And they go to a connector.
Quite small.
Yes. What it does, it basically the sunlight comes through the slits on it, and then it knows which direction has got more sun, and it just moves this giant thing up, down, left, and right towards the sun. And that's what it's for. And I was hoping to fix it because it was cool. Because there's no drama when you're fixing someone's solar panel tracking system instead of like developing for Betaflight. So I did that. It was much more fun. I had a lovely day.
Can we
next week we'll have the solar farm owner on who will complain about the way Dominic Clifton fixed that particular
we have
thing.
that as a soundbite, please?
It puts in a bug request to himself up the ladder.
It's too cloudy in England.
Yeah.
I know. I think they've changed the laws in Spain, so it actually makes it useful to actually get solar power as a company, because I think there was this whole double tax thing out here in Spain, which is really stupid because it's like the one place that gets sunlight all the freaking time, and it should solar power should be just like everywhere here, but the government said no, Endesa, we love you, give us your money, but don't tell anybody that you're giving us money, and we'll help you out too. So that's right. The power company in Spain.
Right. Thank you so much for coming on. I think until we get any PSs, if you're unhappy,
I nearly choked on my tea.
I've had solar for 22 years. Don't listen to him. He's a gobshite. That's why he gets kicked out of everyone's Slack.
I
Thank
just want to
you.
make cool stuff. God damn it! I just want to make cool stuff.
I know, but you've got some sort of personality disorder. I don't know what's wrong with you.
No, I don't either. It's weird.
Well, I know. Oh God! At least you're not Time Cop, where you actually scream at people all the time, and threaten to kill them, even though you're on the run.
No.
Right. Anyway, thank you. You've been listening to Let's Throw Now. You've been joined by everyone's favourite and my favourite, Curry Kitten.
Goodbye.
He's delicious, even if you do dip a poppadom into him. My lovely wife, Tone Star.
For sure.
Our guest for tonight, Mr. Dominic Clifton, Clean Flight.
As Bender would say, cheese it!
Yep. The puppet master, Andrew / Frank.
Goodbye.
With a wonderful blow job. I mean, dry. Leave that in, editor. I don't know whether you can. And I've been Bright Until I Fly. Thank you very much. Good night. And we love all our lovely Patreons, and especially FX Node and Zero for donating. Cheers, guys. That helps Andrew / Frank from killing me, and I might get money for hosting. Nudge.
And next week, I believe Tony has got on a guest next week talking about their new podcast that they've just started up. It's Onigiri. So tune in next week for that.
Oh my God, you're going to have to remind me to do stuff. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
See you all next week, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
See ya!